So it says deep debate between Morning Joe, Al Sharpton, and Eddie Glaude Jr. on the anti-Semitism on college campuses. Now, just as a clarification, when anybody talks about anti-Semitism in this country, what they're referring to is anti-Jewish. Because in reality, anti-Semitism would mean any type of hate directed towards Semites, which are Jewish people and Arabs. So let's make that very clear. Because if we're going to use words, then we have to use their accurate definition of these words. So let's just get into it.
Claiming that the universities and colleges are these hotbeds of anti-Semitism and liberalism. I just beg to disagree, Joe. I've been working in this space for 30 plus years. I'm one of those professors who are often read as radical and all that because I teach in African American studies. And there's anti-Semitism is not at the heart of what we're doing. We're trying to create a way of seeing the world that opens it up to the vast diversity of this world. And so it seems to me that the anti-Semitism that has defined the country over these last few years has been exaggerated, not exaggerated, ignited, grown, expanded as a result of the Israel-Hamas war. And we have to kind of understand that we're in a moment where the country has forgotten how to disagree and students are arguing in that context. I don't know if that made sense, but there's a lot bubbling up in me after I heard Greenblatt give his comments.
Now, first of all, one thing I want to say here is that Eddie Glaude Jr. is literally on college campuses every single day because he's a professor. So he sees what's going on. And we're at a precipice right now where does anti-Semitism exist? Absolutely it does. Has it gone up? Yes. I would argue, yes, it has. But is it at the level that a lot of, and I would say, Zionist students are saying? I would argue that anti-Semitism has arisen higher for Arab students than it has for Jewish students. Now, here's the thing. You have a lot of Jewish students that equate anti-Zionism with anti-Judaism. When in reality, Zionism and Judaism are two separate and different things. Zionism is a political ideology. Judaism is really a religion. And by the way, and I can play it, but there's an actual Jewish rabbi that says Judaism is not even an ethnicity. It's a religion, full stop. That's what a rabbi said. Now, different rabbis would say the interpretation is different. But ultimately, Zionism and Judaism are not the same thing. And so when you speak out against what Israel's doing, and when you talk about ending the occupation, a lot of people with Zionist proclivities would say, oh my God, you want the eradication of Jews, when it's like, no, we just want the occupation to end. That's like saying that we want that indigenous people here in the United States want the illegal occupation of Turtle Island to end, as saying, well, you just want to eradicate all Americans. It's like, no, we don't want to eradicate all Americans. We just want our land back. We just want justice. saying that black people want reparations for the slavery, we're not talking about that we want to make all white people poor or we want to eradicate white people. We just want justice for what has been done to us as a people. So it's always taking this and pushing it way further than what the actual understanding is. And so because of that, there is this fear, this misplaced fear that is attributed to Jewish students, but is never attributed to the Arab or Palestinian students that may be on college campuses. By the way, three college students in Burlington, Vermont were literally shot because they're Palestinian. I would argue that Arab and Palestinian students also, their fears should be validated because of what they're going through. And then a student, by which nationality, I have no idea of that student, but expressing her disdain out of state for what they're doing against the people, gets her life threatened. A little Palestinian boy who is 6 years old gets stabbed over 20 times. And people aren't saying, oh my God, I'm in fear for the Muslim and Arab people in this country. I don't hear people expressing that. Or for all the students who express their solidarity with Palestinians on college campuses, and now they're literally getting doxxed. Black students getting doxxed. But you don't hear Joe Scarborough expressing anything about that. Let's get into this, because this is the thing that gets on my nerves. Because I'm just like, what in the hell is going on?
Well, I mean, but even before the Hamas, the vicious Hamas terror attacks of October 7th last.
By the way, resistance against an occupying force is legal. I'm just going to leave that there.
Year, 60% of the hate crimes recorded last year were recorded against Jews. And Jews only make up a little over 2% of the population, Eddie. Absolutely. That has nothing to do with a war. That has nothing to do with that. And I will say, I've been doing this for 20, 30 years myself, and I can tell you that there has been anti-Semitism on college campuses, and it always seems that these stories bubble up time and time again through the years. And for some reason, there are elites that have a blind spot towards Jews and a penchant for hatred towards Israel because they see Israel as the oppressor. And
hang on, wait a minute, Joe. Let me ask you this question. What about the anti-Semitism within the United States government? And by anti-Semitism, I'm using it in the correct form. The anti-Semitism that murdered 2 million Iraqis. The anti-Semitism that murdered hundreds of thousands of Afghans. The anti-Semitism that literally murdered Libyans. What about the anti-Semitism that is encouraged by the United States government by sending weapons to Nazis in Ukraine? Are we going to talk about that anti-Semitism that the United States government perpetuates day after day, year after year? The United States government doesn't care about Jewish people, because if it did, it wouldn't have given Nazis in Ukraine weapons. Are we going to talk about that type of anti-Semitism? Are we going to talk about the anti-Semitism of when Donald Trump put a ban against people in Arab countries from migrating here? Are we going to talk about the anti-Semitism that Ron DeSantis displays when he says that he doesn't want anybody from Palestine or Gaza ever becoming refugees here? Are we going to talk about that anti-Semitism? No, you wouldn't dare, because brown people don't matter to you. Joe Scarborough is only talking about the white Semites. He doesn't care about the brown Semites. Are we going to talk about the brown Semites? No, because they don't give a shit about them. Because if they actually did, then they would be talking about the anti-Semitism against brown Semites. But every single time anybody is darker, anyone in this country, gotta calm down. Anybody that's darker than cornstarch does not get any deference whatsoever when it comes to their lives being threatened. And that's the crazy part. A white kid is scared, everybody runs to their defense. A black kid is scared, well, he gets shot because he's scared, and that's scaring us. They don't give a shit about brown Semites.
It's naturally into their sort of analytical construct of the world.
Right. So I think it's really important for us to concede the claim that there has been, in fact, an exponential increase in anti-Semitism. We can give an account for that exponential increase having everything to do with Great Replacement theory, have everything to do with Trumpism and MAGA Republicans invoking globalists who are behind the kind of influx of immigration. We can give an account of the very thing that you've talked about, the Tree of Life massacre. We can give an account of that, Joe. But I think it's really important for us to understand that the context of the critique of the state of Israel is not just simply rooted in a deep-seated hatred of Jews.
Right.
People could have a critique of the state of Israel and its policies vis-a-vis Palestinians without trading in the ugliness of anti-Semitism.
That's the point. But people like Joe won't get it through his thick toe-shaped head that, oh, wait a minute, you can critique a state without actually being prejudiced against the people. If you criticize an African country for the policies that it implements and what it does against the marginalized people, does that make you racist? And if you argue against it, then guess what? You just also made the argument for anti-Zionists. Because you can criticize the state of Israel, you can criticize the illegal occupation, you can criticize the apartheid, and not be anti-Semitic. And so people who are on college campuses going, oh my God, we fear for our lives because they're speaking about a state. That fear is misplaced, because I don't get scared when you criticize Nigerian policy. I don't get scared when you criticize Algerian policy or policy out of Mozambique, because I know that you can criticize an African nation without being racist. A Latino is okay if you criticize policy coming out of Colombia. How many people criticize Cuba for their economic policies, but is that anti-Latino? Hello? Are we thinking with our thinking caps here? That's my question. Eddie Glaude here is correct.
And I think this is where we have to begin to disentangle the critique. So if we see a rise in a critique,
Eddie, this morning we've been very critical of the
of course,
Netanyahu government, and have been critical for some time. And
but it's not just Netanyahu. It's not just Netanyahu. Because here's what we're not going to do. What we're not going to do is say, well, if they just get a different person in the head of their government, as long as they keep the illegal occupation going, but they do it nicely, then we're going to be like, okay, Israel can keep doing what it's doing. They're being nice about it, though. They're going to nicely illegal occupy and take the land of the Palestinians. No! What kind of neoliberal BS is that? I'm sorry, but this is the same argument that somebody like Marianne Williamson and RFK Jr. would make. Oh, we don't like Netanyahu. We just want, let's say you get somebody that's on the left, like a Bernie Sanders in Israel, but they keep the illegal occupation going. Does it still make it right just because the person smiles in your face? No. Wrong is wrong. Come on now. It's still wrong. If I threaten your life with a smile, and I say it so nice and sweetly, whisper sweet things in your ear as I threaten your life, does that make it any better? If I kick you out of your house, but I go, oh, I wish you peace. I wish you well. Please, it's about to rain. I hope you got your umbrella. But I still stole your house. Does that make it okay? See the moral spinning that people like Joe Scarborough and people on MSNBC do? But make no mistake, they do the same thing on Fox, CNN, and all these other right-wing and liberal outlets. I don't even know if I'll be able to get through this entire thing. Golly.
And there are an awful lot of people a lot of Jews who've been critical of the Netanyahu regime, but there's a big difference between that and Jews kids not being able to walk across a college campus without being berated or harassed.
But wait a minute. Oh my God. Who was doxxed? Who was told to never even get a job again? Was it Jewish students, or was it Black and Palestinian and Arab students? Whose picture was put on a truck and paraded around on college campuses? We literally got a 15-year-old that literally got expelled because of what his mother posted. Like, are these people? What? I'm getting hot. I'm about to take my jacket off. Good God. Golly.
Our menorahs not being able to be put up on college campuses without them being defaced.
But Joe, you're conflating 2 points here. Now, I'm not disagreeing with that. I said there are protests on campuses. Some hold noxious views. Some are behaving in ways that are unacceptable. I completely agree with that. But what I'm saying is this: there are professors like myself who hold the view that the state of Israel's position vis-a-vis Palestinians is wrong, and I can give an account for it. Because I hold a view consistent with the tradition out of which I come, that every human being, as a creature of God, deserves dignity and standing. should be treated with respect and accorded rights. And so there's an account that I can give. There's an account that you and I can give of why that's a source of critique. Now, this has happened in the context of the explosion of the war in Gaza. And all of a sudden, everything is coming out. And then we're painting with these very broad brushes, my friend. And what I'm trying to suggest very, very, very honestly and lovingly is that what is being described, what's happening on campuses is being described isn't correct in my view.
We have to be careful of something, and I gotta say this. Criticizing the state of Israel is not anti-Semitic. Now, with that being said, I think it's also important that we don't use what's going on as an excuse to be actually anti-Semitic. And by that, I mean actually expressing hate for Jewish people. Which I've been to a Palestinian protest. I didn't see any hate towards Jewish people at all. In fact, I've seen many Jewish people at the Palestinian protests. And they love them just like they loved them before 1948, when they lived among them. And so I have seen people on Twitter make excuses for being anti-Semitic and using this as a way to do that. But for the most part, a lot of the students that are expressing their opinions about what the state is doing to Palestinians are not anti-Semitic. They're criticizing the government. And they're criticizing the policies and what's being done against the Palestinian people, especially in Gaza. It's not just Gaza. It's places in Ramallah. It's places in the West Bank and in Jenin. That's what's going on. And so that isn't hatred against Jewish people. It's hatred against the government of Israel and what it's been doing for 75 years against an indigenous people that has been in that land for hundreds of years. That's the problem. And you got these kids on these college campuses that are conflating the two and thinking that disdain for the policies of a state is equal to their identity.
Too broad of a
Jewish
brush.
kids are afraid. Eddie, there are Jewish parents that would say you are living on another planet. Their children stay in their dorm rooms. They are scared to go to classes. Their parents call them and tell them stay inside today.
Yeah,
it is happening, Eddie, and I'm surprised that you don't know that that is happening when you are. I love you. I can't let you say that this is not happening on college campuses because I know it is.
Joe.
Hold up. Wait a minute. You're telling this to a black man in America, Joe. I have yet to see anybody go this hard for black people on college campuses. Where were you? Where were you when it comes to black people on college campuses? We have to sit through the racism, not just from conservatives, but also liberals, the microaggressions. And yet, he never goes this hard for black people on college campuses. I've never seen them do this. I've never seen a House resolution condemning anti-blackness. If it has happened, please, somebody let me know. Send me the link. Where's our resolution? I haven't seen shit. It's not. Where's the resolution condemning anti-Arab sentiment? Where's the resolution? Show me. And my problem isn't that they put a resolution for Jewish people in the House and passed it condemning anti-Semitism. I don't have a problem with that. My problem is that you don't uphold other groups to that same level, because we don't matter to y'all. Anybody that is darker than mayonnaise does not apply.
I'm saying that it's happening in spaces. I said painting with a broad brush. Painting with a broad brush, because what's happening is that we're linking these discussions as a way of critiquing colleges and universities as these hotbed spaces of illiberalism. That's the problem, that wokeism is the problem, that DEI is the problem. So we need to disentangle what are rightfully, genuinely fears on the part of Jewish students, fears on the part of students, Brother Al, walking around on campus. But we cannot, it seems to me, let this bleed into a criticism of colleges and universities as these illiberal spaces overrun by some left-wing orthodoxy.
They are illiberal, Eddie. They are illiberal. There have been speech codes on college campuses. Kids have been bubble wrapped for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years. Bubble wrapped. They need their own safe spaces. You're not allowed to say this. You're not Eddie, if you don't think that your students aren't afraid to raise their hands and say something that's unpopular that will get them canceled on social media, then you don't know what's going on in your own campuses. Kids who are conservative, kids who are liberal, kids who identify themselves as progressive, they are horrified of being canceled on college campuses because the illiberalism that has continued to rise on college campuses for the past 7 years. Now,
like criticizing the state of Israel, Joe, for fear that they may end up losing their scholarships, for fear that they might have a billionaire that tells the school to not for any businesses to keep hiring them. Is that what you're talking about? For fear of that? For fear of being doxxed and have your picture being posted and then run around on campus calling you an anti-Semite, which you are not? Is that what you're talking about, Joe? Please enlighten me about how these are liberal bubbles, where if you're someone like a Michael Parenti, you really can't go to college campuses that often anymore, because if you're somebody that has a different view outside of the capitalist system, well, then they don't really want you to have you on college campuses. But yet a Ben Shapiro can come in and go against college kids who haven't thought that deeply about some of these issues. And then next thing you know, he beats up on them because they're easy targets, rather than going after somebody who's actually thought deeply on the issue. He thinks they're liberal bubbles. Okay, fine. Liberals are just right-wingers that have pseudo-wokeness. So therefore, what? You want to talk about protection? Okay, they protect a particular class. How many classes do we have that teach economic systems outside of capitalism? Y'all won't dare allow that. Give me a break.
Suddenly, it's Jews who are getting harassed, and people are going, we have to have free speech, no safe spaces. Please, let's not bubble wrap these Jewish kids. We can have the debate. Come on, Eddie. Where have you been, my friend?
But Joe, let me say this. I think we often say two things can be right at the same time. First
Amen.
of all, I think that the fear of many Jewish students are real.
That's
fears.
genuine.
And I think that there is, if somebody's running around campus talking about kill the Jew,
I don't think that's happening.
well, I think that there's been reports that are credible that say that. Just like if they say kill the blacks, but it happens.
Anybody ever see that video of this one Jewish kid saying that he wanted to off Palestinians, off Arabs? Did that kid ever get canceled? I can find it on Twitter. It's pretty easy to find. I can share it with y'all. But he literally talks about, smoking Palestinians or Arabs. Did he get canceled for that? Because maybe it's just me, but I don't ever hear that. Right? Lord and Lord, these people are going to make me pop a blood vessel on this thing. Thank God my blood pressure isn't high.
Happens in a context where I think your point is right, where we saw people marching in Charlottesville saying we will not be replaced. And when you have somebody like Congresswoman Stefanik saying this person shouldn't be a president of a university because they tolerate anti-Semitism or tolerate any of this, but they shouldn't be the president of a university, but Donald Trump, who's a bigot, should be the president of the United States, the same Congresswoman. I think, though, we can't step over the fear, because when I hear someone say, well, let's not worry about a student in a space,
of course,
it's like somebody saying to me, well, what happened with George Floyd was just one guy, and that there's not a problem of policing. There's a...
Hold up. Let me ask you this. Has anybody ever heard of the phrase systemic anti-Semitism? Put it in the chat. Have you ever heard of systemic anti-Semitism? I have never heard of it. I have yet to hear about it. Is anti-Semitism an issue? Yes. Is it as prolific as it's being touted as? I don't think so. But you have heard of systemic racism, haven't you? You have. And yet, when we Black people express our fears, it's always waved away and explained away. So for Al Sharpton to say that, it's not really a one-to-one. Because, yes, a Jewish student can be in fear of some white supremacists, some racist people, things like that. Of course, they can, right? But is that part of a system? Does a Jewish student also experience fear when they're pulled over by the cops? What about when they go to court? Are they in fear that they're going to be judged more harshly and disproportionately than they would any other group? That's my question. I told this to a person yesterday when I was doing I was on another show. I think it comes out later today. For instance, did you know that Scarlett Johansson is Jewish? I didn't know. I didn't know Marianne Williamson was Jewish until she told me. I didn't know Aaron Mate was Jewish until I heard it out of his mouth. See, here's the thing. Just like Irish and Italian people became white in this country, we're now at a place where now a lot of us see Jewish people also as white. So therefore, when it comes to their fears are legitimate, right? But to equate them with the fears of what we as Black people feel, it's nowhere near. I don't hear reports of a lot of unarmed Jewish people being shot in the back by police, by the institutions.
Problem of policing, there's a problem of anti-Semitism, there's a problem of racism, and we've got to deal with people at their pain and use that for the broad
I think
argument.
you're absolutely right, and we don't want to lose sight of the dignity and standing of every human being, of every student.
Right.
But there's something that we keep forgetting, and I think we have to keep it on the table. As we have this debate, there are folk who are defending a position, whether you agree with it or not, that Palestinians are, in fact, bearing the brunt of oppression.
No,
there's an
nobody
argument.
doubts that.
No, there's an argument.
We agree with that.
Okay, and so
I think we all agree with that.
Okay, Joe, and I know Sister Susan, I'm sorry, but there's in the midst of these arguments on campus, it's not just simply one side being an argument directed at Jews. It's an argument directed in defense of Palestinians.
By the way, the Palestinians are being oppressed by whom? And don't say Jews, because it's not based on religion. They're being oppressed by Zionists. Zionism is a political ideology. It has nothing to do with Judaism. Theodor Herzl, the father of Zionism, was an atheist. So therefore, it has nothing to do with actual Judaism. So, when it comes to the Palestinians, yes, they are being oppressed by Zionists. There are Jewish Palestinians that are being oppressed by Zionists.
And sometimes the defense of Palestinians is being read as an anti-Semitic claim. And if we can't distinguish it, then we're going to paint the whole place.
But I understand that many of us
can.
were accused of supporting rioters when we were there saying we were marching against injustice. But we can't excuse the rioters.
I'm not excusing.
And we can't excuse those that do.
I'm not excusing.
Riots are the language of the unheard. Who did that come from? Martin Luther King Jr. I love how he wants to invoke Martin Luther King Jr. when it's convenient, but he doesn't say anything like that. Anyway,
Now, I'm saying that we have to have the moral courage to say we disagree with that, but this is our position. I'm as anti-Netanyahu as anybody in the country, but that does not mean I do not support a two-state solution, and calling for the killing of either side, either people, is not a two-state solution.
The killing of
that is feeding into the survival of the fittest.
The killing of innocence is never justified, ever, period. I agree with
Yes, absolutely. The killing of innocence is never justified. And by that very notion, resistance against an illegal occupying force is also justified. But it's funny how nobody at this table is actually talking about that either. Even though it's legal by international law.
And let's be very clear here. You can be critical of Netanyahu's policies, which we are here.
You know how they keep on saying Netanyahu's policy, but they never talk about the state of Israel's policies? You guys notice that? You too? It's weird. Because some of these policies happened before Netanyahu ever came into office. Goodness. Interesting, right? They didn't say, by the way, they didn't say, oh, Naftali Bennett's policies.
Here every morning and still condemn the anti-Semitism on college campuses. And let me say one more time, this did not start with this war. And there has been anti-Semitism on college campuses for years, and anti-Semitism across the United States has been growing for years. And it has found a safe haven on the far right and on the far left.
Oh no, not the far left. Keep our name out, Joe. Keep our name out your mother effing mouth. No. Anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism. No, you're wrong. The hate is against illegal occupation and apartheid. That's where the hate lies. For a group like Jewish people, it does not exist there like that. Nowhere near. Nowhere. This is how you know somebody like Joe Scarborough doesn't know a thing about the actual left. This is that BS horseshoe theory that somebody like Joe Scarborough subscribes to, which is absolutely stupid and wrong.
For years.
my friend.
More to come. More to come with this conversation. It's so good to have you here, man. It's so good to have you here. Love you. And
love you, man. Playing up for the cameras. But this is the arguments that are being made. This is the arguments that are being made. And the funny thing is, it's never for in defense of any other marginalized group, truthfully and as fervently. I've never seen the ferocity as a defense for people who are black and brown in this country. Whether they're for the black Semites or the brown Semites. And yes, there are also black Semites too. When it comes to the Semites that are black and brown, there's never a defense truthfully for them.